Let's jump straight in. Englewood, watch out.
Fritz Kagi, Cook County Assessor, is with us. Fritz, thanks for taking the call and agreeing to appear on the show today. How are you?
Hey, Lisa, glad to be here with you and your listeners.
So, what should we talk about first? The delay in getting property tax bills, or the fact that places saw their bills jump by 133%? That just seems unreasonable. How and why does that happen? Where we're talking about, West Garfield Park or Englewood, in my mind, that could possibly force people to vacate their homes.
Sure, Lisa. Let's first get out of the way the delayed bills, because that is something that the treasurer does. I've been as eagerly waiting as everyone else for these bills to come out. We went live on the system that has caused the treasurer to be delayed back in 2021. We finished our work this year in May at the assessor's office, back when we had a different pope. And so we were not involved in the delay at all. And we're glad the treasurer got online with the system and finally got them out. But I think the big story that came out in the treasurer's report was how much the commercial bills were down downtown and how much that shifted burden on to others, including the folks in Garfield Park and Englewood and a lot of the neighborhoods that you're talking about. She showed that about $500 million had been shifted on appeal at the Cook County Board Review. The commissioners there made those reductions that we disagree with at the assessor's office. And these are not only the bills for empty office buildings. This is for like big hotels, which are doing way better in 2024 than they were in 2021. Think of a famous hotel downtown. Their bills fell. The biggest data center downtown, their bills fell by millions of dollars. It's owned by a $50 billion company. And the Sears Tower itself, Willis Tower, which is an example of a healthy office building, also had its bill fall. So those are examples of things that shifted about $500 million of burden. And what I like the listeners to think about there is that shift in burden is about $700 per homeowner that was tacked on the bill to every single homeowner in Chicago. And a lot of those South Side neighborhoods, that constitutes not only the majority of the increase, but sometimes all of it. If you look at South Shore, if you look at Woodlawn, some of these neighborhoods, that $700 is almost the entirety of the increase. There are some neighborhoods where bills would have gone up anyway, even if that shift downtown hadn't happened. One of the upsides to the recovery from the housing crisis of the 2010s is that we have seen higher prices for homes being paid in neighborhoods like Austin, West Garfield Park, East Garfield Park, Englewood. But their bills should not have increased so much when you tack on those $700 additional for those commercial cuts downtown that were made by the Board Review that we disagree with. That's what fills me with indignation.
Okay, so you do disagree with that, because it shouldn't fall on the backs of certain neighborhoods, especially neighborhoods that are underserved to begin with. Many of these people barely getting by, although Maria Pappas, Cook County Treasurer, said that Englewood is the new Lincoln Park.
You know what? Look, this study shines a light on the problem. Once you shine a light on the problem and you say that, look at what's happening in these Black and Latino neighborhoods, and you get headlines in both newspapers, and you're interviewing me at 6 a.m, maybe there'll be a wake-up call here to do something about it.
That's interesting that Alderwoman Stephanie Coleman is supportive of the illegal aliens based on her Facebook post, and they are informed of their rights and support. As some of the few Black faces supposedly representing you in your community, did you know about your tax increase early this year? Let's not neglect Alderwoman Jeanette Taylor, too, who is the co-chair of the Immigration and Refugee Committee. Coleman is also endorsing Raja Krishnamurti in the U.S. Senate race, along with a large number of Black pastors who are on the progressive track to charge the rich. The last time I checked, the government does not bring in any money, but the rich does and pay the government a progressive tax. Did you who work in a private sector position realize that major corporations don't just pay your take-home pay, but they are also responsible for funding into your retirement, health care, and pension/401k? That is also part of your salary too. All the while, these same people have led and finishing off your demise. These are the same people who supported your property tax hikes unbeknownst to you, that this was going on all along for well over several months, and now your property is up for grabs.
Politico said this is,
Surprise?
quote, the standoff that Trump wanted. There's another reason why Trump has provoked the current situation in California. He doesn't want to talk about what he calls the big, beautiful bill and what I call the large, lousy law.
How do you respond to that comment?
Well, what Maria pointed to is what fills us with indignation. Their bills were up a lot in Englewood. And, for the folks in Englewood who stuck it out for the housing crisis of the late 2000s and the 2010s, they're finally getting a return on their investment.
Return on their
So
investment?
that's good. We want housing values. We want home equity to be created. And the good news is that home values in Chicago overall are doing very well. They're doing stronger than most cities in the U.S. over the last few years. And over the last 3 years, more home equity has been built up. More generational wealth has been built up on the south and west sides, and more in the last 3 years than in the last 20.
Here are the facts. They pack up and leave. California was an excellent example. So is New York and many of progressive tax cities and states, and our taxes are even higher. The government is not taking a cut. Period.
But people should not be paying for the cuts of those downtown hotels, the data centers, the big buildings, these other buildings that are owned by multi-billion-dollar corporations. They absolutely should not be paying for it. So we've been fighting this, and what we did is we called on President Franklin to lead a study of, because this is not the first year this has happened. This has happened in previous years where we see commercial bills being cut at the board review, appeal by the commissioners at the board review on appeal, and it shifted the burden on the homeowners the last few years. And she did a study, and they came out a year ago showing that in each of the 3 years they looked at, cuts by the board review had been cut excessively in 2 out of the 3 years by 25% too low or more. And they came up with a bunch of recommendations, which we wholeheartedly recommend to stop that from happening in the future. So this is an example of how I've been fighting to make sure that this doesn't happen. We reduced a lot of the inequities that were in residential assessments before. The University of Chicago came out with a big study that showed over the last 6 years we'd taken about $2 billion of burden off of the bottom 70% of homeowners. It really fills us with indignation when we see the board review heaping that back on for these cuts on commercial properties that don't deserve it.
The government blame game will continue, and the citizens will be affected. Know your representative well, or you will experience fill in the blank.